The most impressive thing Trevor Lawrence did in the 2019 National Championship game was nothing. There was no miracle scramble, no fourth quarter drive that people still argue about at bars, and no single throw that ended up on a poster. He just stood in the pocket for 60 minutes against Nick Saban's defense and played quarterback the way you'd play it in a walkthrough. And by the time it was over, Alabama had lost by 28 points. Scouts have a phrase they use when a young quarterback gets overwhelmed, and it's that the game speeds up on him. Everything gets faster than he could process, the pocket feels smaller than it is, and he starts playing scared. That's the entire evaluation, and it's the thing that separates a college starter from a first overall pick. On January 7, 2019, Trevor Lawrence was 19 years and 3 months old, and the game never sped up on him, not once. That's the whole story of why he was already an NFL quarterback that night. 4 months earlier, Lawrence wasn't even the starter. Clemson opened the 2018 season splitting reps between him and Kelly Bryant, who was a senior and who had already taken the Tigers to a playoff the year before. Lawrence was the number 1 overall recruit in his class, so everyone knew that was coming eventually, but Dabo Swinney was in no rush to hand the keys to a teenager. Then the numbers stopped being close. Through 4 games, Lawrence had thrown for 600 yards and 9 touchdowns while averaging 10 yards an attempt, and Swinney named him the starter before the Syracuse game. Bryant transferred out that same week rather than sit on the bench. So Lawrence's first career start came with the program's safety net already gone, and then he took a shoulder to the helmet in the second quarter, left with a concussion, and had to watch a third-string quarterback finish the game for him. Clemson survived that afternoon 27-23. Lawrence came back the following week and threw 21 touchdowns against 2 interceptions for the rest of the season. That number matters because it tells you the hit didn't change him. Here's the part people forget about that title game, and it's the part I think actually decides it. Alabama led. Midway through the second quarter, the Crimson Tide were up 16-14. They were the top-ranked team in the country, they were averaging nearly 48 points a game, and they had a Heisman finalist at quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. Everything about the setup said this was the moment where the 19-year-old blinks. He threw a touchdown pass on the next drive. Then, another one. Clemson went into halftime up 31-16, and Alabama would not score again for the rest of the night. From that 16-14 deficit, Clemson scored 30 unanswered points to finish the game. 30 against Nick Saban in a national championship. I've watched a lot of quarterbacks discover that a stage is too big for them, and I live in Chicago, so believe me when I say I know exactly what that looks like. It looks like happy feet, it looks like a guy staring down his first read, and it looks like throws sailing on him because his adrenaline is running the show. Lawrence's tape from that second quarter looks like a guy running a 2-minute drill in shorts. The stat line was 20 of 32 for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he was voted the offensive player of the game. But the number I'd point to instead is 9, because that's how many different receivers he completed a pass to. That's not something a quarterback does by accident, and it's not something a nervous one does either. It means he was working through progressions rather than locking on to whoever he trusted the most. His favorite target this game was Justin Ross, who caught 6 balls for 153 yards and was also a freshman, which on its own is kind of absurd. The signature play came midway through the third quarter when Ross made a juggling one-handed catch and took it 74 yards for a score, and Swinney went high-stepping down the sideline while the game officially stopped being competitive. Travis Etienne added 2 rushing touchdowns, and on the other side, Trayvon Mullen put together a game with an interception, a sack, and a forced fumble. So no, Lawrence didn't do it all by himself. He just never once got in the way of a team that was better that night. For a teenager, that restraint is the skill. So what actually happened that night? The final was 44-16, and the historical footnotes stack up fast. Clemson became the first team in the AP poll era to finish 15-0, and the first major program to win 15 games since Penn did it in 1897. Alabama had not lost a game by more than 14 points at any point under Nick Saban, and hadn't lost by 20 or more since 2003, when their head coach was, fittingly, Nick Saban at LSU. 2 years later, Lawrence went first overall to Jacksonville, and there was never any real drama about it. Teams were tanking for him while he was still a sophomore. That's the part I keep coming back to. The reason the entire league had made up its mind about Trevor Lawrence before he'd played a snap of professional football wasn't his arm. because plenty of guys have the arm. It was that everybody had already seen the biggest game in the sport get thrown at a 19-year-old and watched his heart rate stay exactly where it was. The game never sped up on him, and once the scout sees that, there's nothing left to find out.